I brought you food again.
You should stop coming here, girl.
Why? Because people say you're dangerous?
No, because the last person who helped me disappeared.
Then maybe it's time someone finally finds out why.
They told Maya not to trust the homeless man at the train station. They said Walter Hayes was just an old liar, hiding behind stories about a deadly fire and a medal he never deserved. Then, one rainy night, Maya opened the envelope he had buried behind a loose brick and found the proof that the city had destroyed an innocent hero to protect the real criminals. Maya Brooks was 24 years old, with tired brown eyes, dark skin, and a quiet strength that made people think she was older than she really was. Every night, she tied her curls into a loose bun, pulled on her faded black jacket, and worked the closing shift at Carter's Bakery, a small family-owned shop tucked between a pharmacy and a pawn store in Pittsburgh. Maya was studying nursing at community college, but school was becoming harder to hold on to. Rent came first, food came second, dreams came last. Her landlord had already taped a warning to her apartment door that morning. Final notice: pay within 7 days or vacate. Maya folded the paper and hid it in her bag before her younger brother could see it. Noah Brooks was 16, tall, restless, and too angry for his age. He had Maya's eyes, but none of her patience. Since their mother died 3 years earlier, Noah had been drifting further away from school and closer to boys who stood on corners with expensive sneakers and no clear source of money. "You're late again," Maya said, when Noah came home just before she left for work. Noah shrugged, dropping his backpack by the door. "I was with friends." "Friends don't make you miss class." He looked away. "You sound like Mom." The words hurt more than he knew, but Maya only grabbed her keys. "There's pasta in the fridge. Heat it up. And please, Noah, stay inside tonight." He didn't answer. At the bakery, Mrs. Helen Carter was already behind the counter, wiping flour from her hands. She was in her early 60s, a short, white woman with silver hair, sharp blue eyes, and the kind of face that could look strict and loving at the same time. She owned Carter's Bakery with the discipline of a soldier and the heart of someone who had fed half the neighborhood for free without admitting it. "You look like you haven't slept," Miss Carter said. "I slept." "For how long? 7 minutes?" Maya forced a smile and tied on her apron. "Maybe 8. The night passed in the usual rhythm, sweeping floors, boxing pastries, wiping counters, counting tips that never added up to enough. Near closing, Mrs. Carter slid a small white takeout box toward Maya. "Day-old rolls," she said casually. "Can't sell them tomorrow." Maya looked inside. 2 rolls, a slice of ham, and a small container of soup. "That's not day-old," Maya said. Mrs. Carter didn't look at her. "Then don't argue." After midnight, Maya locked the bakery door and began the walk home. The shortest route took her past Northside Station, an old train station with cracked stone steps, rusted railings, and a wide awning where the wind always seemed colder. That was where she saw him. An elderly man sat beneath the awning, wrapped in a gray blanket, his back against the wall. He was white, probably in his late 60s, with a weathered face, a thick gray beard, and eyes that looked strangely alert despite the cold. Beside him sat a battered duffel bag and a black trash bag tied with rope. Most people avoided looking at him. Maya almost did the same. But then the man coughed, hard enough that his shoulders shook. She stopped. For a moment, she thought about her rent notice, Noah, her tuition bill, the fact that she had not eaten since noon. Then she looked at the box in her hand. "Sir?" she said softly. The man lifted his eyes. Maya held out the food. "I work at the bakery. We had extra." He stared at the box, then at her, as if trying to decide whether kindness had a trap hidden inside it. "You should keep that," he said. His voice was rough but calm. Young people need to eat. So do old people. A faint smile touched his face. He accepted the box with both hands. "What's your name?" Maya asked. "Walter Hayes," he said. "Formerly Captain Walter Hayes, though nobody calls me that anymore." Maya Brooks. Walter opened the box slowly, like it contained something fragile. "Thank you, Miss Brooks." Maya nodded and started to walk away. Then Walter spoke again. "A decent dinner can keep a man from disappearing." She turned back. The words sounded strange, almost too heavy for a box of leftovers. But Walter was already looking down at the food, eating carefully, with dignity instead of hunger. The next night, Maya brought him another box. And the night after that, she brought coffee too. By the end of the first week, Maya no longer called it extra food. She packed Walter a real dinner before leaving Carter's bakery. A roll, a cup of soup, sometimes a sandwich wrapped carefully in wax paper. Walter never grabbed the food. He always accepted it with both hands, nodded once, and said, "Thank you, Miss Brooks," as if she had brought him something far more valuable than leftovers. One night, while cold wind moved along the stone walls of Northside Station, Walter looked at the coffee cup in his hands and said, "Smoke smells different when children are trapped inside." Maya froze. Walter did not look at her. He stared across the street, past the traffic, past the city lights. Third floor. Old apartment building on Mercer Street. Stairwell gone. Roof ready to fall. I carried 2 boys out under my coat. His fingers tightened around the cup. The little one kept asking if his sister was behind me. Maya sat slowly on the edge of the station steps. "You were a firefighter?" Walter gave a faint, tired smile. "Captain. Engine 27. Long time ago." The next few nights, the stories came in pieces. Walter spoke of alarms screaming before dawn, of burning warehouses, of children coughing into his shoulder, of a medal the city promised but never gave. Then his voice changed when he mentioned the warehouse fire. "That one took 3 of my men," he said. "And after they were gone, they needed someone to blame." Maya wanted to believe him, but she had also heard people at bus stops talk to ghosts, argue with shadows, and build whole lives from pain. Walter's eyes were clear, yet the story felt too large for a man sleeping under a train station awning. At home, Noah was becoming another kind of worry. He came in late with a new black hoodie Maya had not bought him and $20 bills folded in his pocket. "Where did that come from?" she asked. "Work," Noah said. "What work?" "Just errands for Rick." Maya's stomach tightened. Rick Malone was 30, charming in a dangerous way, with gold rings, a clean truck, and boys like Noah always drifting around him. "You stay away from that man," Noah laughed bitterly. "You work 2 jobs and still can't pay rent. Maybe I'm tired of watching us lose." At the bakery, Mrs. Carter noticed Maya moving slower, her face drawn with exhaustion. While Maya wiped the glass counter, Mrs. Carter said, "Kindness is good, honey, but if you empty yourself for everyone, there won't be anything left when your brother needs you." Maya looked down. "Walter has nobody." "And you think that means you have to become everybody?" Maya had no answer. 2 nights later, Officer Daniel Price appeared at Northside Station. He was a broad-shouldered black patrol officer in his late 30s, with close-cropped hair, a tired face, and a voice that sounded like it had repeated too many warnings. He tapped Walter's shoe with the side of his boot. "Hayes, you can't sleep here." Walter lowered his eyes. "Evening, officer." Maya stepped forward. "He's not bothering anyone." Daniel looked at her. "Miss, this is private property." He's sitting under an awning. It's freezing. I don't make the complaints. I answer them. Walter gathered his blanket with practiced shame, and something in Maya snapped. You don't even see him, do you? She said. Daniel's expression hardened, but only for a second. Then his eyes moved to Walter shaking hands, to the food box near his knee, to Maya standing there like a wall between him and the world. I see him, Daniel said quietly. That's the problem. I see too many. He walked away without forcing Walter to move. Walter watched him go, then whispered, Not all men in uniform are cruel. Some are just tired. Maya turned to him. And some helped bury the truth? Walter's face changed. For the first time, Maya saw fear there. Don't ask that, he said. Not yet. The rain came down hard on Thursday night, turning the sidewalk outside Northside Station into a sheet of black glass. Maya held Walter's dinner box under her jacket as she hurried from the bakery, her shoes splashing through puddles, her hair damp beneath her hood. She expected to find Walter under the awning, wrapped in his blanket, waiting with that quiet patience he always carried. Instead, she heard laughter. Two young men stood over him near the station wall. One was tall and thin, with a red cap turned backward. The other was shorter, broad-shouldered, and holding Walter's old duffel bag above his head like a prize. Come on, Captain, the shorter one mocked. What's in here? Gold medals? Walter tried to stand, but his knees gave out. Give it back. Maya ran forward. Hey, leave him alone! The young men turned. The one in the red cap smirked. This your grandpa? He said leave him alone, Maya snapped, stepping between them and Walter. The shorter man laughed and shook the bag. Old man's got secrets? Before Maya could answer, the bag slipped from his wet hand and hit the ground. Its zipper burst open. Clothes, newspapers, a cracked flashlight, and a small metal object scattered across the sidewalk. Walter's face changed. Not anger, terror. He reached for the object, but Maya picked it up first. It was an old firefighter badge, scratched and darkened with age. Under the rainwater, she could still read the engraving. Captain Walter Hayes, Engine 27. The laughter faded from the young men's faces. For a second, even they understood they had touched something sacred. Go, Maya said. The red-cap boy muttered something under his breath, but both of them backed away and disappeared into the rain. Maya knelt beside Walter and handed him the badge. His hands shook as he closed his fingers around it. You told the truth, she whispered. Walter looked away. Truth doesn't mean much after people decide you're guilty. Later that night, Maya sat on the floor of her apartment with her laptop balanced on a milk crate. Noah was not home yet, and the rain tapped against the window like impatient fingers. She typed Walter's full name into the search bar. The first result made her stomach tighten. Fire captain accused in deadly warehouse blaze. The article was old, grainy, and cruel. It said Captain Walter Hayes had ignored safety protocol. It said 3 firefighters died because of his command. It said he left the department in disgrace. There was no mention of children saved, no medal, no Engine 27 brothers defending him. Just one photo of Walter, younger and devastated, surrounded by microphones. Maya kept reading until her eyes burned. Across town, Noah stood in the back of Rick Malone's auto garage, pretending to check his phone. Rick was there with 2 older men, speaking low near a black SUV. Rick Malone was well-dressed, smooth-faced, and dangerous in the way some men were when they smiled too easily. My father still says that warehouse fire should have stayed buried, Rick said. Now some old bum is running his mouth near Northside. Noah's fingers froze over his phone. Warehouse fire. Old bum. When Maya returned to the station the next evening, a bright sign had been nailed to the old brick wall. Future site of Malone Heights Luxury Residences. Her chest went cold. The station was being sold. Walter's little corner, the only place he had left, was about to become another building for people who would never look at men like him. Officer Daniel Price arrived while Maya was staring at the sign. He had no ticket book in his hand this time, no warning in his voice. "You bring him food every night?" Daniel asked. "When I can." Daniel looked toward Walter, who was asleep beneath the awning, the badge hidden again in his coat. "Most people just call dispatch and complain." Maya turned to him. "Is that what you're here for?" Daniel sighed. "Not tonight." Walter woke as Daniel stepped closer, fear flashing across his face. But Daniel only pulled a folded poncho from under his arm and placed it near Walter's bag. "Storm's getting worse," he said quietly. "Try to stay dry." Walter stared at him, stunned. Maya watched Daniel walk away, and for the first time, she wondered how many people in this city knew the truth, and how many had been told to look the other way. Before she left, Walter caught her wrist gently. "Don't dig any deeper, Miss Brooks." "Why?" His eyes lifted to the new development sign on the wall. "Because the men who buried the truth," he said, "are still alive." The next night, Maya reached Northside Station with a dinner box under one arm and a paper cup of coffee in her hand. But Walter was gone. Not moved a few feet away, not asleep behind the old ticket window. Gone. His gray blanket was missing, his duffel bag was missing, and the little space under the awning looked painfully clean, as if someone had erased him on purpose. Maya stood there for several minutes, listening to the traffic hiss over wet pavement, waiting for him to appear from the shadows. He never did. By midnight, she had checked the nearest shelter. By morning, she had called 2 hospitals before her shift. No one would tell her anything because she was not family. At the police station, the woman behind the front desk barely glanced at Walter's description. "Adults have the right to leave," she said. Maya wanted to scream that Walter had nowhere to leave too. Instead, she walked back outside with her phone in her hand, and a fear in her chest she could not swallow. Officer Daniel Price found her near the steps and admitted quietly that no arrest report had been filed under Walter's name. Maya missed half her shift at Carter's bakery that afternoon. Mrs. Carter covered for her once, then twice, but by the third time the older woman pulled her into the back room. "I know you care," Mrs. Carter said, her silver hair dusted with flour, "but I can't keep pretending you're on time when you're not." Maya's eyes filled, though she refused to cry. He didn't just wander off. Something happened. Mrs. Carter's face softened. She packed another box of food and pressed it into Maya's hands. "Then find someone who knew him before the street did." That someone appeared 2 days later outside a closed firehouse on the east side. His name was Frank Bell, a retired firefighter in his 70s, broad as an old oak tree, with a limp, smoke-roughened voice and pale scars across both hands. When Maya showed him Walter's name and the article on her phone, Frank's face went still. "They're still calling him guilty?" he whispered. He told Maya that Walter had not caused the warehouse fire. Walter had dragged 12 people out before the explosion, including 3 children and an unconscious night guard. "He was the bravest man in Engine 27, Frank said. "And they fed him to the wolves." Frank explained that the warehouse had been owned by a wealthy contractor whose safety violations had been ignored for years. Faulty wiring, locked emergency exits, blocked sprinklers. Every warning had been buried. After the explosion killed 3 firefighters, city leaders needed a name the public could hate. Walter became that name. "A chief signed off on the lie," Frank said, voice shaking with old anger. "A contractor paid people to stay quiet, and anyone who argued lost their pension, their job, or worse. Maya thought of the new sign at Northside Station, Malone Heights Luxury Residences. Her stomach turned. Across town, Noah climbed into Rick Malone's black SUV, trying to act like he was not afraid. Rick handed him a sealed brown envelope and told him to deliver it to a man waiting behind the courthouse. Don't open it, don't ask questions. Noah nodded, but when Rick got a phone call, he heard one sentence that made his blood run cold. If the girl finds the tape, my father's finished. That evening, Frank gave Maya one final clue. On the night of the fire, someone had made an audio recording of the emergency radio channel. If that tape still exists, Frank said, it can prove Walter told the truth. Walter came back on a Sunday evening, just as the streetlights flickered on outside Northside Station. Maya saw him from across the road and nearly dropped the coffee in her hand. He was sitting in his old place beneath the awning, but he looked smaller than before, as if the days he had been gone had carved pieces out of him. His beard was rougher, his lips pale, and one side of his coat was torn near the shoulder. Maya ran to him. "Walter!" He lifted his eyes slowly. "Miss Brooks." "Where were you?" Her voice shook with anger and relief. "I looked everywhere. Hospitals, shelters, police stations." "I know." Walter coughed into his sleeve. "That means I was right to trust you." Maya crouched beside him. "Who took you?" Walter did not answer directly. He looked toward the new development sign on the wall, the one that promised luxury apartments where the old station stood. Men who don't like old ghosts walking around with old memories. Before Maya could ask more, Officer Daniel Price appeared near the curb. He was off-duty, wearing a dark jacket instead of his uniform, but his posture still carried the weight of a badge. Daniel's eyes moved from Walter to Maya. "Someone came by the precinct asking about you," Daniel said quietly. Maya stood. "About me?" "A man in a gray suit. Said he worked for a property group. Asked if we had reports of a young woman harassing homeless people near Northside." Daniel's jaw tightened. "He described you." Walter closed his eyes. "It's starting." Daniel looked at Maya. "Whatever you're involved in, be careful. People with money don't ask questions unless they already know the answers." Later that night, Walter insisted Maya help him walk behind the station. The alley was narrow, damp, and littered with broken glass. He leaned heavily on her arm as they reached a forgotten corner where vines crawled over the brick wall. "There," Walter whispered. Maya followed his trembling finger to a loose red brick near the ground. She pulled at it until it shifted free. Behind it was a small hollow space wrapped in plastic. Inside lay a yellowed envelope, an old photograph, and a tiny brass key. The photograph showed a younger Walter standing with 6 firefighters in front of Engine 27. Beside them was a serious-looking woman in a navy suit, short dark hair, sharp eyes, and a hand resting on a stack of legal files. "Her name is Eleanor Whitmore," Walter said. "She was the city prosecutor who tried to reopen the warehouse case." "What happened to her?" "They made sure she lost more than the case." Walter's voice was thin. "Her job, her reputation, her friends." Maya held the envelope carefully. "Why give this to me?" Walter looked at her with a sadness that felt like goodbye. "Because Frank is old. Daniel wears a badge they can pressure, and your brother is already too close to them." Maya went still. "Noah?" Across town, Noah sat behind Rick Malone's garage, scrolling through his phone while Rick argued with an older man in a tailored coat. The man's name was Victor Malone, Rick's father, a wealthy contractor with silver hair, cold eyes, and the polished voice of someone used to winning. Noah heard enough to understand. Victor Malone had owned the warehouse. Rick was not just some neighborhood criminal. He was the son of the man connected to Walter's ruin. At the station, Walter pressed the key into Maya's palm. "If I don't wake up one morning," he said, "take this to the woman in the picture." Maya swallowed hard. "Don't say that." "Promise me." She wanted to refuse. She wanted to tell him he would be there tomorrow, and the night after, and the night after that. But Walter's eyes would not let her lie. "I promise," Maya said. She took the envelope to Carter's bakery before going home. Mrs. Carter was alone in the kitchen, kneading dough beneath the warm yellow lights. She looked at Maya's face and did not ask unnecessary questions. "Is it dangerous?" Mrs. Carter said. "I think so." Mrs. Carter took the envelope, photograph, and key, then opened an old flour bin beneath the counter. Inside was a metal cash box she used for emergency money. She placed Walter's things inside and locked it. "If anyone comes asking," Mrs. Carter said, "I've never seen a thing." Maya hugged her before she could stop herself. Neither of them noticed the dark sedan parked across the street, engine running, headlights off. Inside the car, a man lifted his phone and, "She has the envelope." The cold came early that night, sharp enough to turn every breath outside Northside Station into pale smoke. Maya found Walter sitting under the awning with his coat pulled tight around him, but something was wrong. His head leaned against the brick wall, his eyes half open, his dinner untouched beside him. "Walter?" Maya dropped to her knees. His lips moved, but no sound came out at first. Then his hand found hers, cold and fragile. "Don't let them call me a traitor anymore," he whispered. Before Maya could answer, his body sagged forward. Officer Daniel Price arrived within minutes after Maya called 911, and this time, he did not ask Walter to move. He knelt beside him and pressed 2 fingers to his neck until the ambulance came. At the hospital, Walter lived long enough for Maya to stand beside his bed and hold his hand. The machines beeped softly around him, but his eyes were already looking somewhere far beyond the room. Daniel stood outside the door, silent, his uniform damp from the snow beginning to fall. When the doctor finally came out, his expression said everything before his words did. Maya did not scream. She simply sat down in the hallway and covered her mouth with both hands. Walter Hayes, the man the city had erased, was gone. And now his last request belonged to her. That same night, Maya went to Carter's bakery. Mrs. Carter unlocked the metal cash box and gave her Walter's envelope, the photograph, and the small brass key. Maya opened the envelope on the flour-dusted counter. Inside were old report copies, a list of victims, photographs of the warehouse after the fire, and a folded note in Walter's handwriting. The reports showed blocked exits, broken sprinkler lines, and inspection warnings ignored for months. The photographs showed things the newspaper never mentioned: doors chained shut, melted electrical panels, and a safety notice signed by Victor Malone's company. The note led Maya back to Northside Station before dawn. Daniel went with her. Behind an old row of lockers near the abandoned waiting room, the brass key opened locker number 27. Inside was a sealed cassette tape in a plastic case, wrapped in yellowing newspaper. Daniel stared at it like it might explode. "This is the radio channel recording Frank talked about," Maya said. They took it to a small electronics repair shop Daniel trusted, where an old cassette player crackled to life. Through the static came voices from the night of the warehouse fire. Firefighters warning about chained doors, a dispatcher reporting ignored code violations, and then a command voice saying, "Put it on Hayes. The city cannot survive another Malone scandal." While Maya listened to the recording, Noah was trapped in Rick Malone's garage. Rick had found out he had overheard too much. He shoved Noah against a tool cabinet and spoke with a smile that made the threat worse. Your sister is digging in a grave that doesn't belong to her. Tell her to stop, or I'll make sure both of you lose more than rent money. Noah came home with a bruised cheek and shaking hands. For the first time, he told Maya everything. The envelope, Victor Malone, the tape, and Rick's warning. Maya felt the choice closing around her. Stay silent and keep Noah safe, or speak and give Walter back his name. By morning, Daniel had made his own choice. He arrived at Carter's bakery with a secure phone number written on a card. Eleanor Whitmore, he said. She lives outside the city now. I called in a favor to find her. Maya looked at Noah, then at Mrs. Carter, then at the photograph of Walter with Engine 27. Fear was still there, heavy and real. But Walter's last words were heavier. Maya took the card and dialed. When an older woman's voice answered, careful and guarded, Maya said, "My name is Maya Brooks. Walter Hayes sent me, and I have the proof they burned to bury him." Eleanor Whitmore entered the city council chamber with the posture of a woman who had once lost everything except her spine. She was in her late 60s now, with silver-streaked hair, a navy coat, and eyes so sharp they made men in expensive suits look away. Beside her walked Maya, carrying Walter's photograph and the cassette tape in a small evidence bag. Frank Bell followed with his cane, his old firefighter dress jacket stretched across his broad shoulders. Officer Daniel Price came last, uniform pressed, face solemn. They were not an army, but they looked like people who had stopped being afraid. The chamber was already full. Mrs. Helen Carter had brought half the neighborhood from the bakery. Nurses, bus drivers, retired teachers, single mothers, men who had eaten free bread from her back door and never forgotten it. They filled the seats behind Maya, quiet but present. Noah sat in the front row, a bruise still yellowing near his cheek, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone pale. Across the room, Rick Malone leaned against the wall in a tailored coat, trying to look bored. His father, Victor Malone, sat near the council table, calm as stone. At first, the officials treated Maya like an inconvenience. Councilman Gregory Shaw, a heavy-set man with a polished smile and a reputation for protecting donors, glanced at the papers in front of him and said, "Miss Brooks, we appreciate your concern, but emotional attachment to a deceased homeless man does not automatically reopen a 30-year-old tragedy." A few people murmured. Maya felt heat rise in her face. Eleanor leaned close and whispered, "Let them underestimate you, then make them regret it." Maya stood. Her voice shook at first, but she did not sit down. She told them about the first dinner box, about Walter accepting food with both hands, about the badge engraved with Captain Walter Hayes, Engine 27. She told them he never begged, never lied for sympathy, never asked her for anything except one promise. Then she looked directly at Councilman Shaw. "You keep calling him homeless like that explains why he didn't matter. But before this city threw him away, he ran into fires while men like you ran from responsibility." The chamber went silent. Frank Bell testified next. His voice cracked when he named the 3 firefighters who died in the warehouse. He also named the 12 people Walter saved. "I watched that man carry a boy out with his own coat on fire," Frank said. "And I watched this city turn him into a villain because blaming the truth would have cost powerful men too much money." Eleanor then presented the old reports, inspection warnings, photographs of chained exits, and documents signed by Victor Malone's company. Then Daniel stepped forward. He removed his cap and spoke as if each word cost him something. "I moved Walter along more than once. I told myself I was doing my job. But the truth is, The system trained us to see men like him as problems to clear, not people to protect. I was wrong. His confession shifted something in the room. Even the council members stopped looking at their notes. Noah rose last. His voice was young and scared, but he kept going. He told them Rick Malone had used him for deliveries, that Rick had warned him to make Maya stop asking questions, and that Victor Malone's name had come up again and again. Rick shouted, "Liar!" from the wall, but Daniel's hand moved to his radio, and Rick fell quiet. Noah looked at Maya, ashamed and brave at the same time. "My sister was trying to save a dead man's name," he said. "They tried to scare us into silence." Finally, Maya placed the cassette player on the table. Eleanor pressed play. Static filled the chamber. Then voices from the night of the fire spilled out. Warnings about blocked exits, panic over failed sprinklers, and one cold command that froze every face in the room. "Put it on Hayes. The city cannot survive another Malone scandal." Victor Malone stood so fast his chair scraped the floor. Reporters surged toward the aisle. Councilman Shaw's smile vanished. Eleanor looked at the city attorney and said, "I believe that is enough to begin formal proceedings." By the end of the hearing, Rick Malone was escorted out for questioning. Victor Malone's development permits were frozen, and the retired fire chief who had signed the false report was placed under arrest for evidence suppression and conspiracy. Maya did not smile when the announcement came. She only looked at Walter's photograph on the table. For 30 years, the room that had once helped bury him was forced to say his name differently. Not disgrace, not traitor. Captain Walter Hayes. 6 months after the hearing, the Pittsburgh Fire Department opened its Hall of Honor to a crowd so large that people stood outside in the cold, watching through the glass doors. Reporters filled the back wall. Firefighters from every station in the city stood shoulder to shoulder in dress uniforms. And at the front of the room, beneath the bronze names of fallen heroes, a new plaque had been covered with a black cloth. Maya Brooks stood in the first row, wearing a simple navy dress Mrs. Carter had insisted on buying for her. Beside her sat Noah, cleaner, quieter, and straighter-backed than he had been in years. Frank Bell sat on Maya's other side, both hands wrapped around his cane, his old eyes wet before the ceremony even began. Officer Daniel Price stood near the entrance, no longer looking like a man trapped between duty and conscience. Today, he looked certain. The fire commissioner stepped to the microphone. He was a tall man with gray hair and a voice that carried through the room. "For 30 years, he said, this city allowed a lie to stand where a hero's name should have been." He paused, and the silence felt heavier than applause. "Today, we correct the record." 2 firefighters pulled away the black cloth. The plaque read, "Captain Walter Hayes, Engine 27. For courage, sacrifice, and the rescue of 12 civilians in the North Side warehouse fire." Maya covered her mouth. Frank Bell broke down first. Not loudly. Just one broken sound from a man who had carried guilt too long. Maya reached for his hand. When the commissioner placed Walter's posthumous medal into her palm, the room rose to its feet. This time, Walter's name was not whispered with shame. It was spoken with honor. Outside, the old North Side station had changed too. Victor Malone's luxury development never happened. His permits had been revoked. His company was under federal investigation, and Rick Malone had taken a plea deal after Noah testified. The former fire chief who had buried the evidence was awaiting trial. The building they tried to erase was now freshly painted, warm with light, and alive with voices. Above the restored entrance, new metal letters shone against the brick. No one should be forgotten twice. The Walter Hayes Outreach Center opened that same afternoon. It served homeless residents, retired firefighters, injured first responders, and veterans who had fallen through the cracks. Daniel had accepted the role of community liaison, helping people who once would have been pushed along find beds, documents, medical appointments, and someone willing to listen. Mrs. Carter opened a free bakery table every Friday inside the center. She pretended it was only because she had too many unsold rolls, but everyone knew better. By noon, there was always a line for soup, bread, coffee, and the kind of conversation that made people feel human again. Maya had changed too. The Walter Hayes Memorial Fund awarded her a full nursing scholarship, not as charity, but as recognition for the life she had helped restore. She and Noah moved into a modest apartment with working heat, a real kitchen, and windows that did not rattle when the wind blew. Noah returned to school. He also joined the fire department's youth program, where he learned discipline, service, and how close he had come to becoming a pawn in someone else's corruption. On the center's opening day, he carried a small glass case into the front lobby. Inside was a restored replica of Walter's Firefighter badge. He placed it beneath Walter's photograph. Maya read the small card Noah had written. "Truth can be buried, but it cannot burn forever." Every Friday evening after classes, Maya still came to the center with a paper bag in her hand. A sandwich, a banana, a cup of coffee. Sometimes she gave it to an old man in a torn coat, sometimes to a tired woman with nowhere to sleep, sometimes to a teenager who looked too proud to say he was hungry. One evening she stood by the front doors as snow began to fall over Pittsburgh. For a moment, through the glass reflection, she almost thought she saw Walter sitting beneath the old awning, his blanket over his knees, his eyes bright with that quiet dignity no lie had ever destroyed. Maya smiled through her tears. Walter Hayes had lost 30 years to a city's cowardice. But in the end, the truth took back his name, his honor, and his place among heroes. And it had all begun with one girl, one dinner box, and one old man the world thought was already gone. Sometimes God doesn't send miracles with thunder, angels, or bright lights from heaven. Sometimes he sends one tired girl carrying a dinner box through the cold. Maya never thought she was changing history. She only saw an old man the world had forgotten, and she chose not to walk past him. But maybe that was the whole point. Maybe God places people in front of us, not by accident, but to test whether our hearts are still awake. Walter lost his name, his honor, and almost his place in this world. But one small act of kindness opened the door for truth to rise again. So let me ask you this. If you were Maya, would you have stopped for Walter? Would you risk your safety to defend a stranger's name? Or would you walk away because the world told you it was none of your business? Tell me in the comments. Do you believe God sometimes uses ordinary people to bring hidden truth into the light? If this story touched your heart, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next powerful and unforgettable story.